Welcome to this new video in our series API Payment Integration with Paystack. In this video, we will be handling routes and controllers and finally testing our payment endpoint. So let's dive right in. To make our code more modular, we'll take the controller approach and create a controller and a route going forward. So let's create Paystack controller. In our source, we'll add a new folder, controllers, and add a file, paystack.ts. And in this file, we'll define our Paystack controller class. And like before, we're going to create an instance of it. Paystack controller equal to new Paystack controller, and we'll export default Paystack controller. We can now create an initialize payment function, which will be an async function. And being a controller is going to accept a request, so type request from express. Next we have response, also from express, and within it we're going to destructure the email amount, email, callback URL, and name from the request body. After destructuring that, next we'll need to construct the initialize payment args. So if we move back to the Paystack API class, we have this initialize payment args, right, for this function here. So ensure that I have the export this particular interface to be used here. So we're going to create a new variable here, payment details, which will be of type initialize payment args, right, and it will contain the amount, email, callback URL, which will be mapped to the callback URL from the body. Next, we'll create the metadata, which will contain the amount, email, and name. I'll go ahead and save this. So now we can call Paystack API initialize payment function. So here I have const data is equal to await Paystack API dot initialize payment. Here we'll pass in the payment details, and then we can now return response.status, pass the status code of OK, and we're going to send a response back containing a message, payment initialized successfully. Next, we return the data. So notice here that we do not bother about failure from Paystack API, because from our base API, a non-200 response will actually raise a bad request error. So that has actually handled the failure cases for us. So don't need to consider that anymore. Also, at least for now, also, did you also notice that we did not wrap this function in a try and catch, right? So here I've added a utility function called async wrapper, This will help to clean up our space. So we'll have a try and catch block, right? So the async wrapper receives a function. This function is a controller function with request and response and next parameters. Then we can call promise.resolve on the function and passing in the arguments and calling next if it fails, right? So keeping in mind that express is a series of middleware functions, and since we can call next with the error object as the argument, it triggers our error handler function that we had in our index file here, right? So enough said about that. Let's wrap this with the async await function, async wrapper. Good. All you need to do is just wrap everything up to this point. There you have it, and I'll save that. So to wrap this class up, create another function, the verify payment, which is very similar to what we already have. So we have verify payment. So as earlier, we're going to use an async wrapper. Here we'll have our async function. Our request, response. We can design our verify handler to expect a reference to be passed as a parameter or a query string. I have chosen to go with the query string option to match how paystack returns reference to our webhook or callback URL with the reference key. So if request.query.reference, if it does not have that, let's throw a bad request error and missing transaction reference. Yeah, so that will be the error we'll return. So next, go ahead to make a call to paystack API and destructure the response data. So if we have our query reference, we can actually have structure this await paystack API dot verify payment request dot query dot reference string. So here we can destructure our data out from the metadata and get the email, the amount, name, and we can also get the reference and status, what you can call a transaction status. So I've missed out a particular attribute, which is status, on the payment, right? Which you can indicate, you can use to check if it was actually successful or it was abandoned or it failed, right? So you can use this particular parameter to actually still check and verify that the transaction was successful. So we move back and we update the verify payment response to also contain a status, which would be a string, right? So if we move back to our controller, we have this, right? So next, we check if the status is success, then we can actually give value for payment. So have transaction status. If it's not equal to success, we can throw new bad request error, and we can pass that transaction status. So for the success case, we need to create a record for this transaction. In creating a donation record, we would use SQLize model find or create method as opposed to using the create or save method. This is peculiar to the nature of this handler. So if we move over to the model here, we created our donation model. We had a unique constraint on the payment reference field. So calling the verify handler more than once will throw a database validation constraint error if we use the SQLize create or save model functions. So that said, we have const donation equal to await. So this is going to be an asynchronous call. We're going to make use of the SQLize model here, find or create. So due to the length of this video already, I've taken the liberty of adding our routes here and pointing to our handlers. So here I've created an express router, and I've added a post and a get, a post initialize request, and passing our controller handler here. Also, due to the length of this series already, we're not handling validation. And in the index of the route, I've also added the base route here. So in case you have multiple routes, you can actually add the multiple sub routes here. I'm pointing to their route handlers. So finally, we need to add this route to our index file. Add this app.use. So the path will be API. Then we'll bring in our router. Great job. So finally, we are at the point of testing our APIs to ensure that it's working as expected. To test our application, we ensure that our app is running. Next, we switch over to Postman, ensure that we're making a post request to our initialize payment endpoint. And also, I've taken the liberty to enter the body of our request, having email, name, amount, and callback URL. The callback URL points to our verify paystack endpoint. Normally, this should point to the front end where we'll collect the reference sent by paystack and then make a direct call to our verify payment endpoint. But for these demo purposes, we're just going straight and calling our verify endpoint. So I'll hit send, and then our authorization URL is generated. I'll go ahead and copy this URL and navigate to our browser. Here I'll hit this endpoint. So on this endpoint, to provide our card details to conclude our transactions. So since this is a test environment, it's just few buttons to click. So I'll click on pay. Great, our payment successful. So it navigates us back to our verify endpoint and has passed our query string, which is our reference for this payment, where the verify endpoint makes the call to paystack to verify the endpoint, and we create that record in our database. Hope you enjoyed the video. Kindly subscribe, like, share, and turn on post notification to get notified when we post new videos, and encourage the channel to create more feature focused content.